Welcome to Safe and Sound, sponsored by White Mountain Fire and Life Safety. Today on the show, we have Barbara Stamp, retired registered nurse from Ohio Department of Health. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you.
I wanted to take the opportunity to get you on the show. We had done a show previously, discussed a little bit about vaccines currently, and how long were you a registered nurse for?
Well, I could almost say 50 years.
50 years?
Yeah.
And you started with the county, or?
I started in many places I worked, but I worked a long time with the county health department and then to the Ohio Department of Health.
Okay, so you've been around long enough to see a lot of things.
A lot of changes, yes, for sure.
So one of the things that was a big deal is we were talking earlier about vaccines and certain things that are supposed to be like eradicated now that aren't, like polio. We hear polio is coming back, and you had told me a little story about polio.
Well, with polio, that's dear to my heart because my sister had polio. And of course, she was too young, I think then, even to have the vaccine. But I can still remember the horror to me was seeing my parents look over a child that's not knowing whether she's going to live or die because of polio, because it does affect your legs. Obviously, you would see children with braces on, but then the respiratory system too. And you remember, if you look in history books, you'll see the old iron lung that people were placed in that had polio, and you didn't know if they were going to live or die. So it's a real fear. It's not eradicated from the world yet, but we hope that it will be.
And you mentioned that you also are with the Rotary Club?
Yeah, I'm with the Rotary Club, and that's one of their big focuses is to eliminate polio from the world. Yes, it's my privilege to be president of the Salem, Ohio Rotary Club, and of course we try to raise funds to give to help to eliminate polio.
And that's where the disconnect, I think, is currently. People growing my age now and having families and stuff, we never saw that. We never had to deal with it. And we're like, oh, that's nothing. Like measles, and they just had that measles outbreak. And there's some people that took advantage of it, and they saw. I know that here at the health department, we actually saw more people coming in and getting their measles MMRs. But then you had the other people going, it's not that bad.
Yeah, but it is.
You've seen it.
Of it, all measles, the mumps, and chicken pox, all of them. Whooping cough also. But there isn't one immunization out there today that really isn't needed. They're all needed. They really are. If you've seen a child with measles, it's awful. And you don't know, that's going to affect their respiratory system also. Get pneumonia, they can die from this. I mean, it's very, very serious. And especially with a child with not that much immunity. Mumps, the same thing, cause sterility. And young boys, not good.
Yeah, no.
And chicken pox, we all know dangers there too. We don't have smallpox anymore, thank goodness. But I did give the smallpox vaccine years ago. They don't give that anymore.
What was that the one that you guys were talking about that you have to do the little
We used to come in two separate little wooden containers with tiny little pipettes. That's a little glass tube. One glass tube would have the vaccine in it. The other glass tube would have the needle in it. And you would break it open and put the liquid on and then take the other, which was the needle, and make tiny little pokes. And that's how it was, just on the surface of the skin. You just barely broke the surface of the skin. And then it would be protected for at least a week because they would get a great big scar there, a great big scab, I should say. Mm-hmm. And that would fall off. And then many people you'll see with a scar on their arm from receiving that vaccine.
I'm sure the kids sat real still for that one.
No, never.
We had a little kid at the health department the other day, and I was just waiting for the kid to break out of the door screaming. But I mean, I don't like getting shots, but I get them. I get the flu vaccine. I make sure that I'm up on actually I just got the Hep A shot. A girlfriend was explaining to me at the health department, she's like, well, that's a food virus. The virus
Well,
found
you
in
don't
food.
want to get it from food. Exactly, you
Yeah.
can, yes.
And we actually had a lady that she knows that got it, that works there at the health department, and said it was the worst thing she's ever had. So to prevent it is a bonus.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't have to suffer. Why suffer?
I suffer, yeah.
And that's one of the things here is people don't see these anymore. They think everything's eradicated, or they think what is the other one? The herd mentality, or I'm protected by the herd
Yes.
because everybody
yeah.
else is vaccinated.
No,
No.
it doesn't work. And the
Especially
thing you
now.
have to always remember with all vaccines is you may still get the disease, hopefully not the measles, mumps, rubella, but with the flu. You may still get it, but you're not going to get the worst of it. You're going to have a tempered dose of it. So you will be not as sick, or it might be just a little cold that you'll have instead of having full-blown flu.
And that's like, I remember getting the chicken pox, and I remember chicken pox parties when I was a kid. That was the thing to do, is get the chicken pox party. And I had Audrey, my daughter, wasn't vaccinated for chicken pox until she was 5 years old. I tried to get her to get it, and I thought, oh, okay, because that's what I knew from my family. But on the other hand, my no-no, my grandfather, he's never had chicken pox. He's 84 years old. If my kid gets chicken pox and it goes to my no-no, he'll die. He'll kill him. It'll be horrible. Is what I hear.
Not, yeah, yeah.
I know another story of a little girl who had the chicken pox, and she ended up scratching and had an open sore, and ended up getting what do they call it? A virus that eats at your skin, like one of those, just from playing or having something around her, and it caused a huge thing. So her mom's totally, had she had not ever had chicken pox in the first place, this would have never happened. It was the main cause to where that this kid had a flesh-eating bacteria,
Right.
which I think she lost an arm or something like that. So
Well, and today, adults will get shingles that have had chicken pox. It's a virus. It's the same virus. So, and you can get shingles if you had that virus in you. And if you've ever had chicken pox, you have the virus in you. So it behooves you, for an adult, to get that vaccine.
well, the good thing about that is that here, the health department just got a grant and can cover that.
Good.
Because it's like $200 or something. It's
Yeah.
very expensive.
Very expensive, right.
And I know the older generation, because they've lived through these and they actually have seen what some of these diseases and sicknesses cause, they line up to get these shots, no problem. It is the younger, more liberal, hip population that's like, oh no, we'll cure through food, or we'll cure through elderberries, and that's not a great idea for immunity. Maybe keep up your immune system, so maybe you don't get those little flus here and
But
there.
those need to be aware too that even if with a child with measles, if they're around it and they get measles and they're pregnant, their child could be born blind. So it is something to really, really be concerned about.
Well, and then you have the other people who can't immunize. They can't immunize their children or themselves because they have contraindicating issues.
Maybe time there's religious issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the fact that I know that some kids with neurological issues, there's certain vaccines that they can't get, or kids with cancer who don't have the immunity to build, they can't get shots. So
There's always exceptions. Yeah.
yes, and that's the one thing I like, and I'm sure they've been doing this back then and to now, is they ask you, have you been sick? Do you have this? Do you have that? And that is because they want to make sure that this is the right time for you to get the vaccine, I'm guessing.
For sure.
Now, let me ask you a question. In your entire career of giving vaccines or seeing vaccines given or a part of that, have you ever seen anything happen to a child or a person die because of a vaccination, like they're spouting on Facebook that it's killing
Not that
people?
I know of. I've never, of the children that I've given vaccines to, yes, I've seen a local reaction where the arm gets red. We've had moms call and say that the child was fussy all night. They ran, high fevers, but that was fine. It was maintained with fluids and maybe Tylenol, that kind of thing. But nothing very real severe, no.
Well, and that's good. I mean, I trust in vaccines. I like I said, all my children are vaccinated. I'm working on the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination with my infant right now, and it's getting into the holidays, and I'm like, well, if she gets a little sick from it, now I have my whole family here, and when's the right time to do this? And it's just getting it done. And then the flu vaccine, which we're going to have Janelle on and talk a little bit about that.
That's good, because there's a lot of people that won't get the flu vaccine because they hear that they're going to get sick when they get the flu vaccine. Years ago they did. They did get sick from it because they were given a live vaccine. But now today they don't. They're given what's called a killed vaccine, and it's not going to give you a dose of the flu. It's just going to put some there so that your body will develop antibodies. And before, yes, you did get a mini dose of the flu. And after the swine flu vaccine, that was the last vaccine that was live. They no longer have a live vaccine since then. And that was in the 70s.
What kind of training did they do for you guys when it came to vaccinations?
Always, whether you were with the county health department or the state health department, they educated us about the vaccines. Nothing different about giving them than you do with giving any other injection. But just to make sure that, and then to ask everyone the questions if they're allergic to anything that happens to be in it or not, or if they're sick or any chronic illnesses that they have.
Okay, because you have a lot of people out there that have conspiracy theories and won't do it because, oh, this is going to harm men, or it's the federal government's doing this to.
No.
We're doing it to prevent. It's all about prevention, correct?
Exactly. Oh, exactly. No, you want to prevent it so that other people don't get sick. You know, you don't want to get sick. You don't want yourself to be sick, so that you can take care of your family and be happy with your family, let alone give it to someone else. Yeah. And especially someone else who knows if you're going to be by a child that has a lowered immune system. You know, you don't want that child to get sick because of you, or adult, either way.
Well, and not just with influenza, with any kind of shot, because then you have the aftermath of that, which is, you know, you don't, with measles, you can have situations with getting polio. Obviously,
oh, yeah.
there's some serious situations. In fact, Janelle, the nurse that will be on here next, her grandmother had polio, I think is what she said. So her grandmother's very pro shots. Now, are you completely vaccinated and your children are completely vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Always, yeah.
See, and that's what I like hearing, especially in the health department. If you're a health provider and you're doing the same thing with your children, I would think that if you didn't do that with your children, maybe there'd be an issue. But the fact that you know without a doubt.
They've had it all, yes. And I keep up always with all the flu vaccine, the pneumonia vaccine, whatever.
Yeah, to make sure.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a treat. I'm so excited to have this information out there. It's great to start from the beginning.
Oh, hey, it's been there a long time. I'm glad to keep spreading the word because it's definitely needed. We want everybody to be healthy. That's public health.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Barbara, for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure. And thank you for watching Safe and Sound. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the next guest. Today on the show we have Janelle Lynn, the nursing supervisor for Navajo County Public Health Services District. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So we wanted you on because I brought my kids in to get some shots, and we started talking about the flu vaccine, and there were some things that I didn't know that you were helping me out with. So I wanted you to help everybody else out with that too. What is the difference? We'll start with the beginning between the cold and influenza.
Influenza is a virus. It's a respiratory virus, and you hear a lot of people say, oh, I have the flu. But the true flu is influenza. It oftentimes leads to pneumonia, hospitalizations, and between 30 and 40,000 people a year are diagnosed with influenza. When you hear people say the flu, a lot of the times you're thinking the stomach flu or a bad cold. Most people have actually never had influenza, and if you do, you would remember because you're going to have high fevers, good chance it's going to turn into pneumonia. You're going to have body aches, fever, chills. We had a lady come in for a flu shot one time, and she said, I never got a flu shot, but last year I finally got the flu, and oh my goodness, I thought I was going to die. I was in bed for 2 weeks. I missed 2 weeks of work. She's like, I want a flu shot, and I now know what the flu is, and I'm a firm believer in getting a flu shot now. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my husband and I never had the flu shot until we had Alice, and she was born in October, and she was an infant, and that was the flu season, so I made actually my entire family, grandparents, my daughter, we all went in and got the flu vaccine. None of us were sick, and they said, oh, it wasn't as good or it wasn't as effective. Yeah, but for us, it was 100%. We didn't get anything. And let's talk a little bit about that. How do they figure that part out?
The efficacy rates. Okay, so it's hard to figure exactly how effective your flu shot's going to be because it's kind of a guessing game. So every year there used to be 3 strains in a flu shot. It was a trivalent. Now they're quadrivalent. So there's 4 strains. Usually the vaccine protects against 2 A strains and 2 B strains now with a quadrivalent vaccine. What they do is they see what circulated in the other hemisphere of the earth. Because they're a season ahead of us, and then that's what they formulate our flu vaccine on. So if it happens to be the same strains that circulate, which is usually what happens, then it's usually pretty effective. If by chance it mutates or a different strain circulates, then your efficacy rate goes down. And it's too early in the flu season this year to tell what the efficacy rate's going to be because we don't have very many cases circulating. So they haven't come out with, estimates on this year's efficacy rate. Last year the efficacy rate was down a little bit. It was one of the lowest it's been. However, the few strains that they've seen circulating this year were in last year's flu shot. So they think that may be why we're not having as bad of a year this year, because last year's shot may be still offering some protection from what's circulating right now.
And why is the protection so it only protects you for a certain amount and you have
because
to
they
keep
put different strains in the flu shot each time, and so it's not the same strain of flu that circulates every year. So it's not like you can just have a blanket flu shot that protects you against everything.
But if you are subjected to what you got the year before or the year before,
then you're going to have some protection. Yeah.
Wow. So every year it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes
Sometimes
sense.
they'll have 1 strain or 2 strains in there that are the same, depending what they think is going to circulate. But yes, they put different strains in the flu shot.
Now, when I came in and I was like, do I give my infant, who is 13 months now, actually she'll be 14 months on the 4th, and I was talking to you, I'm like, I don't know if I should give her the flu vaccine. I don't know about it. And then you let me know quite a few things. One of the things that people bring up to me, and you see it on Facebook, it's people who are just, the flu, vaccines, they're horrible. They're just, I don't want to, their education is different. Right. They're looking at what the problems are instead of the solutions. I think that's what leads them to their figuring that out, because I was that way. I didn't get Audrey vaccinated, and she didn't start getting fully vaccinated until she was about 3-4 years old, when I started actually researching the benefits versus the risks. And I was completely eye-opener for me.
Right.
And so when I came to you, I was like, the flu is something new, because my husband and I only started last year. And I was like, what do I do with my infant? And then you came up and told me a couple things that you guys actually offer infants.
Right. Well, first of all, you want to consider that most people who have complications from the flu, so end up with pneumonia, hospitalization, or death, are your infants or your elderly. So they're at, your high risk category there. So it's really highly recommended that infants receive a flu shot. So you start getting vaccinated against flu when you're 6 months of age, and 6 months and above, it's highly recommended that you have an annual flu shot. One of the things you had asked me is, what about mercury? Well, first of all, in 2001, they quit putting, it's not mercury, it's thimerosal, but it is a mercury derivative, in pediatric vaccines. So pediatric vaccines have been thimerosal free since 2001. Second of all, it's been rumored that thimerosal is a link to autism, and that's been scientifically proven that that's not true. So when you're doing your research, make sure you're utilizing credible sites that are evidence-based, CDC, FDA, things like that. And the third thing to consider is that for those kids that are 6 months to 3 years of age, they're getting a single dose vial of flu. That's the way it's packaged for them. And so there is absolutely no thimerosal in those preparations. They do still put trace amounts of thimerosal in vaccines that are multi-dose vials. So that's like some of your vaccines come prepared with 10 doses in a vial. They do that because every time you puncture that cap, there's a chance you could introduce a fungus or a bacteria and contaminate. So those trace amounts of thimerosal keep the vial from becoming contaminated. But they don't even do the shots for the kids 6 months to 3 years of age. They don't do them in a multi-dose prep. They're in a single dose. And then if you're concerned about it after the age of 3, you can just ask wherever you go get your flu vaccine that they use a single dose preparation. then you don't have to worry about those trace amounts. But in the trace amounts, you're going to get more exposure to mercury by eating fish, and people eat fish and seafood every day.
Oh, I love it.
Then you are getting a shot.
And my kids eat
Right.
fish. They eat salmon. My sister just brought us a bunch of Alaskan salmon that she caught, so I was really excited about that. And with that said, people who are nervous about the flu shot, they say, another thing that I hear is, oh, it'll give you the flu. If you get the flu shot, it gives you the flu.
The flu vaccine that they use and have used for years is inactivated. You cannot get the flu from it. It takes up to 2 weeks before it to become effective for your body to start to build antibodies. And so you can become sick into the 2 weeks after getting a flu shot because you don't have enough antibodies circulating in your system to protect you yet. So most people that get sick were either already exposed to the flu or become exposed in that 2 week time period before they've developed enough antibodies to offer full protection. But there is a live version. It's a nasal, intranasal preparation. And there is a slight risk there if you're severely immune compromised or something that you could. So it's contraindicated in individuals that could be at risk for developing the flu from that vaccine. But if you're getting an injectable, it's inactivated and it is not possible to get the flu from the shot. So that's another common misconception.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. It was funny, the other day I was looking at, watching TV and a commercial came on, and it was talking about prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there and it says, it gets into the contraindications, it's going through all this stuff, and one thing was, it makes you paralyzed from the waist down. And I was like, what? So I made Rob come over and watch this, and his mom, she was there, and I was like, can you believe this? It paralyzes you from the waist down, it does this and this. And I said, and people take that, want to take that.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, when the flu vaccine, there's not, the only contraindications that are there are why you wouldn't take it. Like if you have some kind of neurological
If you
disorder,
have a
right?
history of Guillain-Barre within 6 weeks of getting a flu shot, they recommend you not get another one. But they're coming out with more and more options. They have a preparation now for adults 65 and older because they don't build as good of an immune response, so their efficacy rate is lower than you or I. So they've come out with a high dose flu shot for those individuals to boost their efficacy rate. They have a preparation now because flu shots are they're grown inside of an egg, so if you have an egg allergy, it's contraindicated. But they have a preparation now that's not developed in an egg for people who have egg allergies, so they're coming out with more and more options. But they screen really carefully for your contraindications, and if you have, a risk factor, they're not going to give you your flu vaccine.
Well, I know when I go in to get it, I have to fill out that form,
Right.
and it asks me everything, even if I'm sick or if I've had
Right.
blood transplants or any
Right.
type of organ transplants. And I was like, wow, that's weird. What happens when somebody checks that? You just go, oh, no.
Well, then we talk to them and see what's going on, see what vaccines they're going to get, and see if it's contraindicated or not.
To what they have. See, and that's what I like. I feel more confident. And then the other thing I like about the health department is that you're not getting a shot from a CNA, you're getting a shot from a nurse. And I know we've said that before, but that is just so huge, especially like with my children and infants. I remember my daughter got a shot. No offense to the lady, but she was a CNA and she was given a shot, and man, the welt on her little leg, and I had to rub it and put warm cloth on it. I felt so bad. It's bad enough they're getting a shot. You just want to make it as comfortable and as quick as possible.
Right.
And hopefully she forgets, doesn't, because I work there. I don't want her to come in and be like, anytime she comes and visit me at work, because she knows she's going to get a shot.
Good shots.
Yeah, poor little kid. But with the contraindications, what I wanted to point out was what my husband told me. He said they have to list anything and everything by law.
Right.
And there was this lady on Facebook who had this thing about shots, and she put it up there, and she goes, look at all the contraindications. And Rob just kind of, nicely was like, rolled his eyes and said, it's because by law they have to do that.
Right.
Same with cigarettes. By law you have to have everything that's in the cigarettes and everything that it could do to you, and yet people still
do it.
which is a little depressing. I think they'd learn. But anyway, I wanted to be able to get this information out to the group, and you had mentioned the nasal.
Right.
That's something that your daughter does because
My daughter's 15 and she is terrified of needles, so she does the intranasal every year.
and that works just fine.
It does.
It's funny because everybody who's pro-shot or nurses, all nurses I know, their whole family, the majority, they're all vaccinated. I don't know a nurse whose family isn't or they aren't. And the same with the doctors.
Right.
I mean, I go to Dr. Robertson and his, for pediatrics, and his daughter's kids go to him, and I just say, do what your daughter's kids are doing. Yeah. You know, and it's nice like that. And I'm getting the same treatment as they are. So, you know, I trust in that.
Right.
You know, it's not like the government where they're on a different healthcare system than everybody else. But anyway, that's another story. Thank you so much for coming on here and helping get the information out there so people can see. If you feel sick and you come up and you're not in the hospital, most likely you do not have the flu.
Well, you could still have the flu if you're not in the hospital, but there are antivirals. So within 48 hours of developing flu-like symptoms, extreme respiratory symptoms, high fever, things like that, go to your doctor, and if you take those within 48 to 72 hours, it can really reduce the symptoms and the length of your illness if you do have true influenza.
Oh, wow. And if you don't want to lose out on work, make sure that you do get
your
the flu
shot, and we have flu shots in stock, pediatric and adult, so make an appointment at the local health department nearest you, and we can hook you up.
All right, we'll put that information on there.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Safe and Sound, and we'll see you next month.